Hello lovely people, my name is Emma and today I am bringing you my TBR for Non-Fiction November. It is my absolute favourite readathon of the entire year. Non-Fiction November is hosted by the wonderful Book Olive and this is its like 8th year maybe now or something ridiculous. Basically it's a reading initiative to try and just read either more non-fiction if you read a little bit or one non-fiction if you read none. I'm a huge non-fiction fan, as is well documented on this channel, so my goal in every non-fiction November is to just try to read non-fiction throughout the entire month of November. So I've got TBR of 8 books to talk about today. The readathon has 4 prompts that you can use if you want to, and these are always singular word prompts. So I have 2 books for each prompt, one that is like a high priority book and then one that is a if I manage to get to it. It's really difficult to know how much reading I'm going to get done in November because I've got one of my biggest exams of like my entire career as a veterinary nurse at the very end of the month, but I do also have some time off in the month and quite a few long train journeys, which are always great for smashing out books. The first one-word prompt is fraud, and the book that I've got as high priority is The Girl with 7 Names by Hyeonseo Lee. I think I've pronounced that correctly. This is the autobiography or memoir of a woman who managed to escape North Korea, and it is about her time during North Korea and living over there, and then her attempt to escape and sort of her life since then. I've had it on my Kindle for a really long time, so I'd like to try and get to it, and the way that I'm working this in is fraud, the lies that North Korea tells their population, and then the no doubt fraud that she had to commit in terms of identity fraud to try and flee. So that's how we're connecting these things together. Fraud in both positive and negative ways. My stretch goal of if I manage to get to it is Big Pharma by Ben Goldacre. I have this on audiobook. This is a fairly powerhouse book of popular science slash sort of sociology, economics, and it's a look at Big Pharma and the kind of pharmacology industry and how it controls the supply of drugs, how drugs are formed, and the ways that drug companies who are motivated by profit are not necessarily fully truthful with how they interact with the medical community. I'm sure it's going to make me incredibly angry. It's a really big, well-known book that's been out for a really long time, and it's sort of one that I haven't managed to get to yet, but it's sort of a powerhouse big name to try and tick off for non-fiction. I've read a fair number of medical books. I will link all the various science, biology, medicine things in the talk down below, including some books on drugs. So it'll be interesting to see about the sort of behind the scenes economics of it, but these often do get referenced in books talking about history of medicine in general, so I do know a bit about it, but I'm assuming it's just going to make me livid. The next prompt is web, and for that the first book that I'm going to try and prioritise is The Windrush Betrayal by Amelia Gentleman. This is another one that I have on audiobook, and this is about the Windrush, which was a ship that basically brought a lot of black individuals who were technically under British rule, I think from Jamaica, but I might have the country wrong, and this is exactly why I need to read the book and really brush up on my British history in this area, over into the UK, I think either after the First or the Second World War, to help sort of with a replacement of labour and sort of a surplus of individuals, because Britain was struggling after the war. And then it is about the subsequent various ways that the government and the general population has done these people dirty, whether it be by the like reception that they received when they came to Britain, but then also the way the government have denied them various things like citizenship and stuff like that and tried to send them back, I believe. I did watch a documentary that featured Windrush quite heavily years ago now, like 3-4 years, so I'm sure once I start reading it facts will start to come back to me, but again, similar to Bad Pharma, I'm sure it's going to make me absolutely livid at history in general, but yeah, it's one that I really do need to try and prioritise and get to. I thought web would work quite nicely for the tangled web of lies that I'm sure has been told over and over again to the various people who came over from Windrush and also to the general public as a whole. So it is going to be a tangled web that we'll need to unweave. On the note of weaving and unweaving things, my stretch goal for web is The Threads of Life by Clare Hunter. This is a history of the world through the eye of a needle, and it's looking at fabric, craft, embroidery, thread work in general, across history and across the globe, looking at ways that women's work has been undervalued and how women have used things like fabric craft to be able to make a living, rebel, communicate, find community, and generally function as a whole. I've read quite a few books in the past about things like fabric craft. I have a whole video about fabric and fabric craft stuff where I show off my embroidery collection. I'll link it somewhere. Got a ton of videos about random stuff on this channel. And I've also read quite a few books on art history, colour, things like that quite often feature fabric within them. This one looks really interesting, and I think it's got a lot more politics in it than some of the other books that I've read in this area, and it has made its way onto several different TBRs. I think it was on my Non-Fiction November whenever I last attempted to do this and completely failed because of my studies, so I would really like to try and get to this one as well. So this is, whilst technically not the highest priority of the two, I think once I've got through the first 4 of each one of the prompts, this one is going to be really up there as one to try and get to. The next prompt is capital, and I have some stretch to get these ones working. Where's the book gone? It's just behind me. There we go. My high priority book is The Medici by Paul Strathern. So this is on my Around the World in 12 non-fiction challenge that I'm challenging myself to do for the next year or so. I will link it down below, where I'm just trying to read non-fiction books about history, but specifically about world history for countries other than Britain, to try and expand my horizons a little bit. So this is some Italian history. These guys were the godfathers of the Renaissance, and they had a lot of capital to spend, as in money. You see what I did there? Yeah. Because they were just really this big name, incredibly rich, influential family who sponsored and pushed a lot of artwork, but were also heavily involved in royalty and in sort of various high courts. Catherine de Medici was Queen of France at one point. She married, insert his name here, I think it's one of the Henrys. So yeah, it's an area of history that I know a little bit about from sort of dabbling in other books, but it'd be really good to read a bit more about in particular. So this is why it is high priority. It's time that we brush up on my Italian history. And then my reach goal, which the way I'm trying to work capital to this is ridiculous, is The Moon, A History for the Future by Oliver Morton. So the moon doesn't have a capital. Oh, there we go. Or if you think that that's a bit of a stretch, this book does look at this space race and the various clout and capital that was both spent on it but brought to the various nations involved in the space race between US and Russia. Yeah, that works. This is the stretchiest of all of them. Just go with it. I want to read a book about the moon. So this is a look at the moon as a whole, its role within human history, both some of the early scientific discoveries using the moon where it comes to things like space and gravitational fields and ellipses and things like that. And then obviously the space race is going to feature very heavily in this, and NASA. And then what are we doing with the moon now, essentially, and sort of what does it represent in our current scientific understanding? What kind of research is going on? This I think is going to be fantastic, and I'm pretty sure I've listened to a few podcasts from either this guy or just about the moon in general, so I thought it'd be really fun to branch out from. I read a lot of like biology and a lot of kind of plant and nature writing and sort of medical stuff, and I thought it'd be really fun to reach into a little bit more of a space astrophysics-y kind of vibe and really branch out with some of my science writing. So that's why this guy is on here. Also the cover's fantastic. The last prompt is display, and my top priority book for that one is The Queens of Animation by Nathalia Holt. This is a look at the history of animation, as the title would suggest, and the various women artists who are involved in early animation on television. Hence the TV display that they then drew and presented information on. Yeah, we like it. We're accepting display. Good, good, good. Less of a reach the moon, wasn't it? So this has been again on TBRs on and off for years. I found out about it through Curious Reader's channel, Nathalie, and she raved about this book. And I love micro histories, especially ones about really specific industries, really specific areas, and ones that do a lot of the unsung heroes, especially when women are involved. So this is going to be ticking a whole bunch of boxes. I have it on ebook and audiobook, I think. If not, then I've got it on my wish list and I've got a couple of credits to burn. So I'm not too sure which one I'm going to go for yet, but definitely one that I really want to try and prioritize, because like I say, it has been bouncing around TBRs for freaking forever. And then the final book that I'm hoping to try and get to, it wouldn't be a non-fiction November TBR if it didn't feature something paleontology from me, now would it? And that is The Dragon Seekers by Christopher McGowan. This is the discovery of dinosaurs during the prelude to Darwin, and it's basically looking at some of the real big names in natural history at the time, and the various people who started to make these early discoveries before evolution was a particularly accepted or even sort of known about idea, and how did we factor them into the current kind of scientific theory of the time, and sort of who were these people who were discovering them. I'm hoping it's going to talk about Mary Anning a lot, who is an absolute, again, unsung hero, queen of paleontology and sort of paleontology history, but I'm sure it's going to talk about some of the big name players of the time, and I really like history of science and history of ideas, so this one should be perfect for me. And some of the early discoveries were just so cool. I have one of them on my arm. Look, this is an iguanodon. He was one of the first that they discovered, so hopefully we'll learn about Mr. Iggs in here. So yeah, so not the highest priority of all the books on the list, but definitely up there, and hopefully I'll get to it. And yeah, you knew paleontology was going to be happening here. So that is it from me. Those are all the books I'm hoping to get to in non-fiction November. This is a TBR that I could have rewritten like 6 times over, and I'm really hoping it's just going to be a great reading month where I get loads read on the train, loads read on my time off, and we add even more non-fiction to this list. Do let me know what you think to these titles, if you've read any of them before, and if it's something that you are particularly interested in any of them. And I will have a specific non-fiction November recommendations video coming to you in the next upload that I do, which will probably be on Monday, so look out for that one. If you are new to this channel and you found me through Non-Fiction November, I have boatloads of non-fiction content from a huge variety of different subgenres, from like history, autobiography, science, history of science. Like there's a lot out, nature writing, travel writing, like I've done a fair amount, so please do check it out in the various sections down below, because yeah, it's an area that I bloody love, and more people should definitely read non-fiction. So that's it from me. I've got a bus I've got to go catch, so have a wonderful reading week, and I'll chat to you soon. Bye.